Life doesn't owe us a long ending. It only owes us the truth. At 92 years old, Willie Nelson isn't speaking like a man chasing more time. He's talking like someone who has already lived several lifetimes. Fame, loss, money, music, love. He's seen all of it come and go. And now, in his own quiet way, he's saying something that has left even his closest fans uneasy. This isn't about a farewell tour. It's not about retirement. And it's definitely not a casual interview moment. When Willie talks about death now, there's no fear in his voice, no drama, just calm. That calm didn't come from peace alone. It came from pain. From moments that broke him long before age ever could. From losses that don't fade, no matter how many songs you write. What's strange is this. The man who once fought everything, rules, systems, even his own limits, now sounds ready for something final. Not desperate, not sad, just ready. But why? What happened in his life that changed the way he looks at the end? What truth did 92 years finally force him to accept? This is not a normal story. And the reason behind his words is heavier than most people realize. Stay with us, because once you hear the real sense, you'll never hear Willie Nelson the same way again. When the world left first. Long before fame, long before the lights of Nashville ever touched him, Willie Nelson learned a lesson most children never should. He was born on April 29, 1933, in Abbott, Texas, a small town where the dust never seemed to settle, and the work never seemed to end. It was a time when survival itself was uncertain, when a meal on the table could not be guaranteed. But hunger wasn't the first thing taken from him. Promises of return were made in passing, whispered into small ears that didn't know enough to question. But those promises never came true. The absence didn't scream at him. It settled slowly, like a shadow across his young life. And it taught a child something he would carry forever. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is guaranteed. Not love, not attention, not even the hope of protection. Childhood, for Willie, wasn't soft or safe. He spent long days working in the cotton fields, his small hands blistered and bleeding under the merciless Texas sun. The work was backbreaking, relentless, and at times seemed cruelly unfair. Every cotton plant he picked, every row he completed, left marks not just on his skin, but on his spirit. Pain came early. Hardship came early. But the deeper wounds weren't visible. They were quiet lessons about absence, about being left behind, about learning that people, even those you rely on most, can leave, and you will have to go on without them. Music became the first thing in his life that offered any permanence, any sense of reliability. When Willie was 6, his grandparents gave him a guitar. Slowly, in the quiet hours strumming strings under the fading Texas sun, music became not just a hobby, but a shelter. It offered a rhythm to life that the world outside his front door could not. It whispered that even when the people you love most are gone, something, however fragile, could remain. That fragile thing would follow him into every hardship he faced, every failed audition, every empty stage, every note that didn't land. That early absence, the leaving of his parents, the harsh realities of survival, shaped the way Willie would see the world for decades. He learned not to hold too tightly to anyone or anything, because loss could come at any time, silently and without warning. People leave, belongings disappear, opportunities vanish, and life has a way of reminding you, gently or cruelly, that everything is temporary. The lesson was quiet, but it was relentless. Cling to nothing. Rely on what is within you, and keep moving forward. Even as fame approached and audiences began to cheer his name, The memory of that early abandonment lingered. The fear of being left. The memory of being small and helpless under the hot Texas sun never left him entirely. The guitar that never walked away was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a witness, and eventually, a tool to transform absence into something that could touch millions. By the time Willie Nelson reached adulthood, that early lesson had solidified. Nothing lasts forever, and people will leave. But what remains, if you are careful enough to notice, is resilience. And from resilience, a quiet kind of freedom grows. It was here, in Abbott, Texas, in the blistering heat and silent fields, that Willie learned the first truth of his life: that being left behind doesn't have to end you. It only teaches you what you must carry forward. Success didn't save him. When Willie Nelson's songs finally reached Nashville, success still felt far away. His words were good enough for others to sing, but his name stayed in the background. Famous voices recorded his songs, earned applause, and built careers from lines Willie had written, alone. Meanwhile, he counted the change to pay rent. Recognition came without relief. On the outside, it looked like progress. On the inside, nothing felt stable. Willie worked odd jobs to survive, moving from place to place, never settling. Writing music didn't guarantee food on the table. Each small step forward came with a reminder that talent alone doesn't protect you from struggle. Marriage was supposed to bring safety. Instead, it brought pressure. Love turned into expectations that Willie couldn't meet. The house filled with tension, not warmth. Bills piled up. Dreams sounded good in theory, but they didn't silence overdue notices. Arguments became common, and hope quietly slipped away. Alcohol entered his life without drama. It wasn't about parties or celebration. It was about quiet nights and heavy thoughts. Drinking helped him forget the weight he carried during the day. It softened the edges of failure. For a while, it made things easier to ignore. But forgetting isn't healing. It only delays the pain. One night, everything felt too heavy. The rejections, the fighting, the feeling of falling behind while others moved forward. Willie walked into the cold Nashville street and lay down on the road. Not to make a statement, not to be seen. He was simply tired of continuing. Cars passed by, drivers swerved, no one stopped. Life didn't end. That moment didn't destroy him. It showed him something he hadn't understood before. Survival isn't always brave. Sometimes it's just automatic. Sometimes you wake up the next day not because you feel strong, but because you're still breathing. Willie went home carrying a new truth. Pain doesn't always come with lessons right away. Some experiences don't inspire. They empty you. They leave a space where confidence used to be. That emptiness didn't disappear when success finally arrived. It stayed quiet, waiting. And later in life, when greater losses came, that same hollow feeling would return, stronger, deeper, and harder to escape. The loss that never healed. Emotional core. On Christmas Day, 1991, Willie Nelson's world shattered in a way nothing else had ever done. The music, the tours, the struggles, all of it suddenly felt small against the weight of that single, unbearable moment. His son, Billy, took his own life. A life that had carried so much promise, so much love, is now gone. In an instant, the father who had endured poverty, abandonment, and failure felt a pain that was sharper, deeper, and more personal than anything he had faced before. Grief doesn't follow rules. It doesn't wait for the calendar to give it time. There is no formula to measure loss, no way to understand a tragedy like this. Billy had carried a weight too heavy for any child. Being the son of Willie Nelson was a life filled with expectations, silent pressures, and unspoken comparisons. The world saw a legend, but they didn't see a boy struggling under the shadow of his father's fame. While Willie could turn heartbreak into song, into performance, Billy couldn't. The music that healed one man offered no refuge for another. Willie rarely spoke of that day. Words felt inadequate, meaningless, unable to carry the enormity of the loss. Silence became his language, a quiet companion in a life already familiar with absence. But silence doesn't erase pain. It simply houses it. Some wounds never close. Some grief never fades. Some pain doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't give you lessons or wisdom. It simply changes the shape of your heart, stretching it into forms you never imagined, leaving room for emptiness, for memories, for longing. After that day, death stopped being a general idea for Willie. It became immediate, personal, close enough to touch. Watching his child vanish from life made the inevitability of his own mortality impossible to ignore. Each breath, each passing year, each concert became a reminder that life is fragile, that it can be stolen in silence without warning. The fear of his own ending shifted, no longer abstract, no longer a far-off concept. It became something intimate, intertwined with the shadow of Billy's absence, a quiet understanding that life can change in a single heartbeat. In the years that followed, Willie carried that loss like a shadow. It lingered in the notes of songs, in the pauses between chords, in the quiet spaces backstage where the applause couldn't reach. He learned that grief is not about moving on. It's about carrying someone with you in ways you cannot speak aloud. Some days it overwhelms. Some days it sits quietly, almost unnoticed. But it never leaves entirely. That Christmas marked a turning point. Before it, Willie had understood suffering. After it, he understood fragility. He understood the weight of absence. And he understood the profound, unshakable truth that some pain is not meant to heal. It is meant to change you forever. Losing everything and learning what stays. Not long after the unbearable loss of his son, life threw Willie Nelson another blow, this one less personal, but no less devastating. The Internal Revenue Service arrived with papers, letters, and the kind of authority that makes you feel powerless. Millions in debt had been quietly accumulating, the result of mismanaged accounts and advisors who promised guidance but delivered disaster. It was a financial ruin, the likes of which few could imagine. For many, this would have been the end. Bankruptcy would have been the easy way out, a legal shield to start over, to protect oneself from the weight of numbers that seemed impossible to repay. But Willie refused. Not out of stubborn pride, not to prove a point, but out of principle. He had promised himself, long ago, that he would honor commitments, that he would not allow shortcuts or legal loopholes to undo his responsibility. Every penny owed would be repaid, every obligation met, no matter how long it took. And so, he worked. He toured relentlessly, performed at any venue that would pay, sold possessions one by one, and watched strangers bid on items that had once defined his life. His guitars, his gold records, the piano where songs that had shaped his career were written, all gone to settle a debt that seemed insurmountable. Yet, through all of it, something remarkable happened. What Willie expected to crush him barely left a mark. Compared to the death of his son, losing material wealth felt distant, almost inconsequential. Money left. Music stayed. That realization settled into him like a quiet truth. It taught him that possessions, no matter how golden or grand, do not anchor life. Houses, awards, land, these can vanish, can be taken without consent. What endures is meaning. The music he created, the love he felt, the lessons learned through decades of struggle, these things could not be seized. These things could not be measured in dollars or taxed away. In the months and years that followed, Willie approached life differently. The IRS battle left scars, yes, but it also brought clarity. He understood that attachment to material things invites pain. That freedom, real freedom, comes not from holding tightly, but from knowing what is truly yours. The work of your hands, the voice you raise, the connections you nurture, the integrity you keep. The financial catastrophe became a mirror, reflecting lessons learned the hard way. Pain can teach, but only if you notice what remains when everything else disappears. Willie Nelson had lost property, awards, and even some peace of mind, yet he discovered a deeper resilience. A man who had seen death strike his family now saw that life, in its rawest form, continues even when everything else is stripped away. Through it all, he realized something heavy, almost frightening in its simplicity. What survives loss is what mattered in the first place. And what matters isn't gold, isn't land, isn't fame. It is the music, the meaning, the life, lived authentically, without illusion. That knowledge became his anchor, the quiet principle that carried him through every stage, every concert, every remaining year. When the body starts to leave. 2 years of living on his own terms had left a mark on Willie Nelson, far beyond the stage lights and applause. The years of smoking, long nights of touring, and relentless work had quietly damaged his lungs. Breathing, something most people take for granted, had become work. Every inhale was heavier than it should have been. Every exhale a reminder that the body, no matter how strong in spirit, is not immortal. Pneumonia visited repeatedly, each time leaving his lungs weaker, each time reminding him that time is patient, but unforgiving. Then came COVID, a virus that had claimed millions around the world. For Willie, with lungs already scarred and fragile, it was a battle that could have ended everything. Every breath became a struggle, every cough a warning. Nights were long, the fear quiet but constant. In those moments, he didn't act brave for the cameras. He didn't tell stories for fans. He simply faced his body failing him, slowly, honestly, without pretense. And in that honesty, he found a raw kind of clarity. Life is temporary, fragile, and every breath is a gift. Around him, the world continued its relentless march. Friends who had shared the highs and lows of music, of life, began to leave. Johnny Cash, the man in black, who had been his brother in song and spirit, succumbed first. The pain of watching him fade, of attending the funeral, was profound. Then Waylon Jennings followed, and Chris Christopherson. One by one, the pillars of his world, those who had lived through the outlaw era beside him, disappeared. Each loss was a reminder of mortality, of the fact that even legends cannot escape the same fate as everyone else. Being the last one left is not a victory. It's a weight. Every performance, every public appearance, every quiet morning alone is underscored by the knowledge that your turn will come just like theirs did. Watching these friends go, Willie began to understand something final about death. It is not inherently cruel. It is indifferent. The real cruelty is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of leaving, fear of what remains for those left behind. In those years, Willie reflected deeply. He realized that life, even for someone who had lived it loudly and boldly, is fragile. Music and fame can't prevent the body from failing, can't stop the inevitable. But fear can be managed, acknowledged, and even quieted. Death becomes less terrifying when it is accepted as part of the natural order, as a chapter in a story that has already been written with both triumph and tragedy. By the time he reached his 90s, Willie knew that the moments left mattered more than the moments gone. Each song sung, each breath taken, each memory recalled became a meditation on survival, loss, and the final truths of life. The body may weaken, friends may leave, and time may slip away. But understanding the nature of death, seeing it clearly without illusions, became his quiet, unshakable strength. At 92, Willie Nelson isn't chasing more time. He's honoring the time he had. His words aren't dark, they're clear. He knows what stays, he knows what leaves. Music stays, love stays, truth stays, everything else passes. The reason Willie sounds ready isn't that life failed him. It's because life showed him everything it could. The pain, the joy, the loss, the peace. When you've faced all of it, fear loses its power. If this story made you think differently about life, about endings, or about what truly matters, let us know in the comments. We read everyone. And if you want more real stories told honestly without noise, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because some lessons only come at the end. And some voices are worth hearing until the very last note.